All right, so get ready for something pretty different today.
Okay.
We're diving into the world of Viktor Schauberger.
Oh, cool.
I
I've heard a little bit about him, but I'm definitely no expert.
You sent over a ton of material, his writings, research,
Yeah.
inspired by his work, even personal stories.
Yeah.
And I got to say, this is not your typical science deep dive.
Right.
This guy was something else.
Yeah, what really gets me about Schauberger is how he just seemed to be on a totally different wavelength. Here's a Austrian forester,
Right.
early 1900s,
Yeah.
but he's coming up with these ideas about energy and nature that were just completely out there for his time.
Yeah, and in one of the articles, there's this story about him just spending hours and hours just staring
Yeah.
at flowing water.
Hmm.
Like he was convinced it held some kind of secret code to the universe or something.
Yeah, like he was trying to download something from it.
Right, and it wasn't just like some poetic fascination. He actually believed that water was the key to understanding consciousness itself.
Wow.
I know.
That's a pretty big claim.
It is a big claim.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Schauberger really felt that mainstream science back then was missing something big.
Hmm.
He thought it was too focused on the material world, too limited by its instruments and methods, and just not able to grasp these living energies he kept talking about.
Yeah.
He even compared himself to, like, Mozart and Max Planck.
Oh, wow.
Those guys who were totally ridiculed for their ideas?
But then later on.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's totally vindicated.
Opposite of their time.
So let's talk about these living energies, because it seems like this concept was behind everything Schauberger did.
Yeah.
From his observations of nature to his inventions. Where do we even begin unpacking this?
Well, I think the best place to start is with his idea of implosion.
Okay.
This was like his central concept. He believed it was the fundamental life-creating force in nature. The opposite of explosion, which is what most of our technology is based on.
So instead of things blowing up, it's more like spiraling inwards.
Exactly. Think of a whirlpool.
Okay.
It draws energy inwards and upwards, creating a cooling, concentrating effect.
Mm-hmm.
Schauberger believed that this is how nature builds, grows, sustains life. Not through brute force, but through this subtle, spiraling inward motion.
And he actually applied this principle to real-world inventions.
Oh, yeah, he did.
Like what?
Well, there's this amazing story about a log flume he designed.
A log flume.
Yeah, basically a water slide for logs.
Okay.
But he designed it in a way that used the natural flow of water to transport timber way more efficiently than conventional methods.
Interesting.
He also designed these special water pipes.
Mm.
They had these spiral forms inside, and he claimed that this revitalized the water.
Revitalized.
Like it made it healthier, somehow more alive.
Interesting.
And then there are the more like out there inventions, the repulsator for generating energy, the climator for temperature regulation, even designs for a flying disc based on implosion.
Hold on, a flying disc. We are definitely coming back to that one.
Oh, yeah, we have.
But let's stick with water for now. You mentioned these spiral pipes. It sounds like Schauberger didn't see water just as, H2O,
No, not at all.
like a chemical compound.
He considered water to be like a living organism with its own energy and a specific kind of health. And he believed that the way we treat water, how we make it flow, what we add to it, all of that had a huge impact on its vitality.
There's a part in one of the articles about the half hydrological cycle,
Right.
which he links to things like floods and droughts.
Yeah.
It sounds like he was warning about messing with natural water cycles way before it became a mainstream concern.
He was. He was really critical of deforestation, which obviously disrupts the natural flow and absorption of water, and even modern water treatment methods. He said things like chlorination, while it kills bacteria, might also be destroying some of the subtle life-giving properties of water that we don't fully understand.
It's like we're so focused on making water clean in a chemical sense that we might be missing the bigger picture of its energetic qualities. Okay, so this is all pretty mind-blowing already.
Yeah, just wait, there's more.
But we also have to talk about trees, because it seems like Schauberger had a deep connection with them.
Yeah.
What was he seeing in the forests that other people weren't?
Well, Schauberger, he saw forests as these like incredibly complex systems, totally interconnected.
Yeah.
Crucial for keeping the whole planet in balance.
Right, like the water cycle, the energy flow, everything.
Exactly. And he was just fascinated by how trees work.
Yeah.
How they pull water upwards against gravity, how
Right.
they regulate temperature, how they interact with light and all these subtle energies.
Yeah, he wasn't a big fan of modern forestry practices, though, was he?
Yeah, not at all. He was really critical of clear-cutting and monoculture,
Yeah.
planting just one type of tree.
Right.
He argued that it, weakened the whole forest,
Mm.
made the trees more susceptible to disease, and produced lower quality timber.
There's that passage where he compares a naturally grown tree to a human who's lived a healthy life.
Right.
And a tree from a plantation is like someone raised in confinement, never exposed to fresh air or sunlight.
Yeah, it's like the trees are getting sick just like we are.
Right. And he actually believed that this lack of vitality in trees was mirrored in the declining health of humans.
It's this deep interconnectedness.
Yeah.
The health of the forest is a reflection of our own health.
And not just physical health,
Yeah.
right?
No, it goes way beyond that.
Mental, emotional, even spiritual.
Exactly.
It's making me think about how much we've separated ourselves from nature,
Totally.
We spend all our time indoors, surrounded by artificial light and technology.
Right.
Could that be part of the reason we're so sick these days?
It's definitely a possibility.
It's a pretty radical idea, but it's worth thinking about.
It is.
Yeah.
And this connection between trees and human health goes even deeper.
Oh, yeah.
Schauberger pointed out this crazy similarity between chlorophyll in plants and hemoglobin in our blood.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, they have almost identical molecular structures.
Wow.
The only difference is chlorophyll has a magnesium atom at its core, and hemoglobin has iron. He said this wasn't just a coincidence.
Right.
It shows this deep energetic relationship between plants and humans.
It's like we're literally breathing the life force of trees into our bodies.
Exactly.
Makes you want to go hug a tree right now.
Right.
Okay, so we've covered water trees, this concept of living energies,
Yeah.
but we can't avoid this any longer.
Yeah.
Schauberger's views on the sun.
Yeah.
This is where things get really out there.
This is where his intuition really took him to the edge of what considered scientifically acceptable.
So tell me,
He believed that the sun is actually a cold, dark body.
wait a minute, a cold sun, but we can feel the heat.
I know, it sounds crazy.
So how did he explain that?
He thought that the heat we feel is actually generated through the interaction of the sun's energy with the Earth's atmosphere. It's kind of like friction.
Okay.
When two surfaces rub together, they create heat.
Right.
He thought something similar was happening on a cosmic scale.
So the sun itself isn't a giant ball of fire.
Not according to Schauberger.
It's more like a source of some other kind of energy
Right.
that interacts with our atmosphere to produce heat and light.
Exactly.
I'm trying to wrap my head around this.
I know, it's a lot.
It's such a different way of thinking about the sun.
It is. He pointed to the fact that space is incredibly cold and dark,
Right.
even though it's full of starlight.
Yeah.
And he drew on his observations of water, too.
Oh,
How there's a cooling effect on the upstream side of objects in flowing water, and the temperature variations you get with different types of motion?
interesting.
He thought there were parallels there.
I'm curious, are there any scientists today who actually support this view?
It's still a very fringe idea.
Right.
Most mainstream scientists would say it's completely incompatible with what we know about astrophysics.
Yeah.
But, there are a few researchers out there who are open to exploring alternative theories about the sun and how it produces energy.
This is not totally off the table.
Not completely.
It's definitely an area where more research is needed.
Definitely.
But even if Schauberger was wrong about the sun being cold,
Yeah.
the fact that he was willing to question such a fundamental assumption,
Right.
it just shows how differently he was thinking about energy and how it works in the universe.
Totally. And that unconventional thinking extended to his views on technology and how we harness energy.
Right. He wasn't a fan of combustion and explosion, was he?
No, he thought it was totally out of sync with nature's way of doing things.
He kept coming back to that idea of implosion,
Right.
harnessing that inward spiraling energy.
Exactly.
Did he actually come up with any practical ways to do that?
He did. Besides those water pipes and the log flume, he designed a bunch of devices aimed at tapping into this implosion energy.
Like what?
One of the most famous is the repulsator.
The repulsator.
It was this device that supposedly used swirling water to generate a powerful suction force, which could then be converted into usable energy.
So he was basically trying to create artificial whirlpools to generate power.
That's a simplified way of putting it, but yeah.
Oh,
There are also stories about a device called the climator.
the climator.
It supposedly used similar principles to regulate temperature, creating both heating and cooling effects without any external energy input.
That's incredible.
It,
Did these things actually work?
It's hard to say for sure.
Really?
Some of his inventions were never fully built.
Hmm.
And the details of how they were supposed to work are kind of shrouded in mystery.
Right.
There are people who claim to have replicated some of his devices with varying degrees of success, but it's tough to verify those claims.
So it sounds like Schauberger was this brilliant but kind of enigmatic figure.
Definitely.
His ideas were groundbreaking, but it's not always clear how they were supposed to work in practice.
That's what makes him so fascinating.
Yeah.
He was a visionary who dared to think differently, to challenge the status quo, and to imagine a world where technology works in harmony with nature.
Instead of against it.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered water trees.
Mm-hmm.
The sun even touched on some of his inventions.
Yeah.
But there's one more area we need to explore: agriculture.
Yay.
Schauberger had some pretty radical ideas about how to grow food.
He did. Yeah, he had a very different perspective on agriculture.
Yeah, like he almost seemed to view the soil as something sacred, like a living being in its own right.
Right, and he was so critical of modern agricultural practices.
Yeah, especially chemical fertilizers and heavy machinery.
Right, he believed that all that stuff was basically killing the soil.
Disrupting the natural energies, the microbial life, all of it.
Exactly. He even said that using iron plows was harmful.
Really?
Yeah, he thought they created these electromagnetic fields that messed with the soil's natural balance.
Instead, he advocated for copper plows.
Right, and he actually designed this special plow with curved spiral blades.
Wow.
He claimed that it would enhance the flow of energies in the soil
Interesting.
and lead to healthier, more vibrant crops.
So it wasn't just theory for him.
No, not at all. There are stories of farmers who actually used his methods.
Yeah. What happened?
And they reported amazing results, increased yields, improved soil fertility crops that were more resistant to pests and diseases.
It's mind-blowing to think that something as simple as the shape of a plow could have such a big impact.
I know, it's incredible.
And the type of metal it's made from.
It all goes back to working with nature, understanding its subtle energies and processes rather than trying to dominate and control it.
Okay, so we've covered water trees,
Yeah.
the sun technology, agriculture.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's clear that Schauberger was way ahead of his time.
He really was a visionary.
But what does it all mean for us today?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Right, like how can we actually apply these ideas in our modern world?
Well, there are no easy answers.
Right.
Schauberger's work is complex.
Yeah.
And some of his ideas are still being debated, But I think there are a few key takeaways that we can all consider.
Okay, like give us some starting points.
Well, first and foremost, I think Schauberger is really challenging us to cultivate a deeper awareness of nature. To really pay attention to how things work in the natural world,
Yeah.
to observe the patterns and processes,
Right.
and to understand the interconnectedness of everything.
So it's not just about reading about nature or watching documentaries.
No.
It's about getting out there and experiencing it firsthand.
Exactly. Go for a walk in the woods, sit by a river, watch the clouds move across the sky.
Right.
Pay attention to the details, the shapes, the sounds, the smells, the way things flow and interact.
It's like we need to reawaken our senses and start seeing the world with fresh eyes.
Like Schauberger did.
Yeah.
And as we do that, I think we'll naturally start to develop a deeper respect for nature, for its intelligence and wisdom.
Yeah.
We'll start to see that we're not separate from nature.
Right, we're part of it.
Exactly.
Which then leads to that shift in mindset from domination and control to collaboration and harmony.
Right? Instead of trying to force nature to conform to our will, what if we tried to learn from it? What if we designed our technologies and systems to mimic natural processes?
This is where biomimicry comes in, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Looking to nature for inspiration and guidance in solving human problems.
There are so many amazing examples of that already happening.
Like what?
Architects designing buildings inspired by termite mounds.
Cool.
Engineers developing wind turbines that mimic the flight of birds. Scientists creating new materials based on the structures found in nature.
It's really exciting to think about the possibilities.
It is.
If we really embrace this approach.
Yeah.
But it's not just about technology, is it?
No, it goes way beyond that.
It's about how we live our lives, how we relate to each other, how we make decisions as a society.
Absolutely. Schauberger believed that everything we do can either be in harmony with nature or out of sync with it.
He talked about centrifugens and centripetence, right?
Yeah.
Those opposing forces.
Centrifugence is the outward-moving expansive force.
All right.
And centripetence is the inward-moving contracting force. He thought modern society was way too focused on centrifuges,
Yeah.
on outward expansion and material acquisition at the expense of centripetence.
Right, the inward focus on quality, connection, and spiritual growth.
Exactly.
So it's about finding that balance, that
Yes.
harmony between those two forces.
Between that sweet spot.
Well, this has been quite a journey.
It has.
We've explored so many fascinating ideas.
So many.
And I think we've only just scratched the surface of Schauberger's work.
Definitely.
He was a true pioneer.
Absolutely.
A visionary who dared to think differently and to challenge the status quo.
And even if we don't agree with everything he said, I
Yeah.
think there's so much we can learn from his approach.
Like what?
His deep respect for nature, his willingness to question assumptions, his ability to see connections that other people missed, and his belief in the possibility of a more harmonious future.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Viktor Schauberger, we want to leave you with a question to ponder.
Okay.
If he was right, if living energies really are the key to a sustainable and thriving future, what small step can you take today to connect with and learn from those forces all around us?
That's a great question.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey.
It was my pleasure.